Well, I think we can call the meeting to order at approximately 7:02, and I'm going to ask our Secretary Paige Bennett just to brief everybody on how we're going to conduct the meeting tonight. Paige?
Okay, sorry. 2 secs here, everyone. And sorry, I'm a little bit delayed too, I think because I'm sharing my screen. So I'll just go through a few of the parts about Zoom, and then we'll come back up there. So this meeting is being recorded, and welcome everyone. It is so good to see some faces there right now anyway. So we are going to be sharing this link with members afterwards. So that's going to be emailed out. It's not going to be put on Facebook. It'll be emailed to everyone. And I am sharing my screen, and that's, I think, partially what is causing a bit of a lag time. And I'm going to be showing the agenda as we go, as well as some of the documents that that some of our speakers are going to be addressing. If you want to ask questions, then you can go to reactions. It's at the bottom of your screen. It might be underneath the 3 dots where it says more, but it's on reactions, and just click raise hand, and then at an appropriate time, Brian or I will ask you to unmute yourself and to share your question or comment. And then after you've spoken, just go back to lower hand, and then that part's finished. Now, everyone was muted in order to help with reduced background noise. But when you are called on, just unmute yourself to ask a question, and then just mute yourself again. And there's that microphone icon at the bottom of your screen. And another way to ask a question is to use the chat function. So again, that's also at the bottom, and you can just type in your question. And Brian or I will read that aloud if you'd prefer to not actually say it aloud. We are actually going to ask people to turn off their videos because there are a number of folks who are joining us here from the lake, and perhaps their internet isn't as quick. And so we thought it'd be a little bit easier to have those videos turned off. But if you do have a question, and at the end, we definitely want to see everyone's faces. So please do turn those videos back on again. And as we go through the agenda, every section, Brian is going to take questions after each of those items, as well as at the end. If people have new business that they want to bring up, or if they have any other questions, know that you will have a chance to be able to ask them again at the end. Okay, and thank you for your patience. Of course, this is our first virtual AGM. We're trying our best, and it'll be great, we're sure. But anyway, I'll go back up to this slide, Brian, and pass it back to you.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Paige. Certainly welcome, as Paige extended a welcome to everybody. It is great that we finally got together after 3 years since our last meeting at Camp Conowongo, I believe it was. And the minutes of that meeting were lengthy and are attached. I'm sure some of you have taken the liberty to read that. So I want to acknowledge certainly that Lake Talon vicinity is the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquins of Ontario, specifically our good friends, the Mattawa North Bay Algonquin First Nation, and also the Antoine Algonquin First Nation. As always, we're grateful to share this land, and we recognize that we too, particularly as our association, we too have a very heavy responsibility to protect this lake for generations to come. And there is our motto. It's on our website, and working together to ensure an enjoyable tomorrow. I think that says it all, and that's why I participate, and many of you as well. We work together, each in our own way, to make the lake a better place, and I believe that we've achieved that year after year. And I want to certainly thank those people that came before us, John Kelso, Barry Pond, Don Wallace, Roger LaFramboise, Mike Wilson, those people that served us well and continue to support the LTCA. So welcome, and we will now start the meeting. I want to introduce our board of directors. I've been the president for several years. Scott Ross, who works out of British Columbia, but was a resident of Mattawa and has a cottage just up past Grasswells. He's our vice president. Lorraine Poisson came to us very recently as treasurer. She's been a terrific asset and very, very keen, and brought some new ideas and techniques. And we are definitely benefiting from her experience. Paige Bennett has also been with us several years, kind of in the background as secretary, but she's taken a strong role this year in terms of organizing this virtual meeting, which is our first. And she's ably assisted kind of as co-secretary by her sister, Jane. And I think many of you certainly know Clint Wilson. Clint's on the line here as well. He's our summer student supervisor, and he's also a director. So there's 5 of us that are board of directors, and we serve until we choose not to, and then there will be an opening there. But I do want to compliment them all for their participation. This organization does take a lot of work. There's a lot goes on behind the scenes, and all these people are there to assist me and provide guidance, leadership, and difference of opinion. And I think we're in a very strong position, and I'm very pleased to have them participate along with me. As I said, Lorraine has come on board as treasurer. She volunteered very, very quickly. And the reason why she did that is Nancy Humphreys. Many of you know and have dealt with Nancy for the past 15 or more years. Nancy has been a tremendous asset, carried us through some difficult years financially, organizationally, and Nancy has been there for all the presidents, all the executive, keeping the books, all the while maintaining a very thriving and busy business at the same time. So we thank Nancy and her family for all their time that they put in and the hard work that she's done on the association's behalf as treasurer. So we are truly forever grateful, Nancy. And I know anybody that does do business or stop in at the marina, please thank Nancy for all the work that she has put in and continues to. She has been an excellent tutor and almost co-treasurer this last 6 months as Lorraine assumes the role, but naturally you want some advice, and Nancy never hesitates, and she's just a joy to deal with. So thank you, Nancy, on behalf of everyone. I'd like to call a motion as standard operating procedure to approve the minutes from the 2019 annual general meeting. They were attached to the agenda. They're very lengthy. If we could call for a mover and a seconder to approve those minutes, we'll do so now. The floor is open.
Barry Pond, so moved.
Thank you, Barry. We have a seconder to Barry's motion to approve the minutes.
Jane Bennett, seconded.
Thank you, Jane.
No problem.
Okay, we'll move on to the next item, please. All in favor? I think we're all in favor of that. Okay, we're going to kind of combine old and new business because it's been, as I say, 3 years since we've had the last meeting. So it's just basically, and they're kind of mixed order. So we'll just deal with Old and new business item number one being the Algonquin land claim. Really, I've been trying to follow this as many others have. It seems to have gone quiet in the last year or maybe 2 years. I did reach out a few days ago to the Mattawa North Bay Algonquin First Nation chief, Clifford Bastian Jr., and asked him to update us. He has not done that, but I understand from talking to him previously, it's a very confidential stage with negotiations with the province. And of course, there's many different groups involved in the Algonquin land claim. And actually, the Mattawa North Bay Algonquin First Nation is probably the largest by far of all the various Algonquin First Nations. Other people have asked me, and I'm sure it's a natural question, why is the Algonquin First Nation kind of been more involved than they have been previously in terms of various issues on the lake? Well, one certainly is there's a substantial number of their members, residents on the lake, primarily in the Greens Bay area, but elsewhere. As part of the Algonquin First Nation kind of public release there 2 or 3 years ago, there was a fairly substantial parcel of property on what I call the South Shore opposite Grasswells that was designated to flow to Algonquin First Nation. So they obviously have an interest in that. In the last couple of years, they've certainly been involved in trying to pressure our political representatives, along with ourselves, into trying to improve Blanchard's Landing, and latterly concerned about siltation, fish management, water level management. And we've had several meetings with them as kind of partners. So I value their partnership, and we have actually a history of working with them very successfully. And many of you will have been here when we had the Interjects wind farm, a proposal of about 46 huge windmills that were proposed to go on to the mountain, basically from James Bay right down to Mattawa. We mobilized the LTCA and the Algonquin First Nation very, very effectively, public relations campaign, and also a huge public turnout at Mattawa. And we were one of the only groups in Ontario that managed to defeat a proposal before it even got started. And I credit both the chief of the Antoine First Nation and the Mattawa North Bay. They had so many of their members out to the meeting. In fact, they couldn't get in the door. There was the Legion building was full, and they were very vociferous and strong in their views that this can happen. And we were told afterwards by the organizer of Interjects that they knew their fate was sealed right at that meeting. So we have a long-standing relationship for many reasons, and we've been successful. And that's about all I can say as far as the Algonquin land claim goes. I really don't know where it stands now. It's that's about all I can say. So I open the floor. Any comments or questions on that? Maybe somebody could add. We recently did have, as I pointed out, we have had 2 meetings this month, actually. I think August the 6th and last Friday. I attended both meetings with the Algonquin First Nations. The Conservation Authority was there with a couple of representatives. The Ontario Parks Superintendent was there. The last meeting, the Township of Bonfield was there, Township of Calvin. So we had a wide representation trying, in this specific instance, to try to get some kind of concerted action to improve Blanchard's Landing dock and boat ramp, and also to see what is needed to possibly do some localized dredging because of the heavy siltation over the decades. Most of you now realize Sharps Creek is probably depositing a lot of silt. In fact, some people have suggested what's going to happen in another 10 years. It's almost going to close off Kybusgang in some ways, but hopefully that won't come to that. So they are looking at some solutions that involve environmental assessments, and they have got some preliminary advice from the members of provincial parliament and federal parliament that there will be monies available. So it's a long process. I believe it'll take 5 years, but I'm also of the view that, you know, something at Blanchard's Landing should happen much sooner than later. So we failed before. I admit that. We tried about 6 years ago and come up with nothing. So it's really in the hands of Ontario Parks and Ministry of Natural Resources and the political leaders. So that's what all I can offer on Algonquin land claim and associated involvement by their group.
Brian, I would just like to make a comment, just to thank you so much for the leadership that you've taken with all of these different initiatives on behalf of the LTCA. And you've been so inclusive in terms of the representation, and it is really made a big impact. So thank you so much for all of the work that you continue to do.
Thank you, Paige. Yes, it's a work in progress. As I say, we've tried before. We had some meetings with provincial member of parliament there last Christmas in January and couldn't make any headway. So, but I think that I know the chief is behind this 100%. He wants action, and we're along to support them as we see fit, representing our interests as well. We can move along then. Call on our treasurer, Lorraine Poisson, to give us a financial report. Lorraine?
Thank you, Brian. First, I'd like to thank Brian for allowing me the opportunity to join the team. I'm really enjoying it. And I'd like to thank Nancy for all her support as she shadows me as I go through my first year. So a couple things. We'll take a look at the statement from last year, the year-end statement. Okay, so in this, I'll just mention that our total revenue last year was over 16,000. And at the end of the year, our bank balance was just over 14,000. So we started the year in a pretty good, stable footing. And when I look at the budget this year, I expect we'll continue to improve. And that's mostly due to the grants that we are receiving. So if I were to summarize the budget for this year and give a recap of what some of the big numbers are, this year we're looking at a revenue of 18,000. So that's the grants, the memberships, and the donations. To run the student program, it costs just over 12,000. And we have operating expenses this year. It's going to come in around 3,000. And so at the end of the year, we'll have a net income of around 3,000. So with the support of the grants, we're continuing to be in a healthy, stable position. And even though we're getting the grants, which covers the student program, I did want to mention that all the memberships that we receive, all the donations, they're still so important. And I just wanted to thank everyone for joining as a member. I know this year we've had some new members, so thank you for joining. And from there, I'll just confirm that our membership report, our membership tally as of this week is 150. So that's a little bit more than last year. And it's just wonderful that we've reached that amount at this point. For those that have submitted payments recently, I still owe some people some receipts. I'll be getting the rest of those out by the end of next week. So, thank you very much. Brian?
Yes, a very solid financial picture. I think back 7 or 8 years ago, we weren't in desperate straits, but we were a declining balance sheet year after year because of the student expenses, which we feel is our #1 priority. So, and our membership continues to grow. I set a personal target this year of 150, and it looks like we've met that this week, which is fairly early on. Normally we have, there's always some stragglers or new people that come to us in September, even October. So it's very encouraging, and it's really good news. And I want to say that the students themselves, Callum and Matthew, have been very, very good in securing new memberships. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. But I want to say we're very open with the books. We're very positive and pleased where we stand, and we want to keep it that way. So as Lorraine mentioned, and I mentioned, and of course, a lot of people may know the situation, but I'm sure there's a few on here know that this may be news, but Ontario Parks goes back having an agreement with us for maintenance of the Mattawa River Provincial Park, probably more than 20 years. Barry Pond was one of the ones that negotiated that agreement. Mattawa River Provincial Park, if you've looked on the maps, is a very large portion of the shoreline, particularly the north side, all Crown land. But it's kind of a different type of provincial park. It's a provincial park on paper, and the fact that it is owned by the Crown, but is what they call a non-operating park. That means there's no really budget for any activities within the boundaries of the Mattawa River Provincial Park. And that may explain some things like Blanchard's Landing and a few others. They have given us $3,000 for probably a decade or two. $3,000 doesn't go as far as it used to. And right now it hardly pays for the gas, oil, and garbage disposal. But nevertheless, we have an agreement with them. They ask us to do maintenance at over half a dozen different locations. Talon Chutes being the major one, obviously. Blanchard's Landing, Grasswells, Medora Island, Blueberry Island, also Black Bay Boat Ramp, and the Portage. And the students do provide a daily log to tell the parks people what they've done, how much material they removed, what they found. So we do talk to the parks people regularly, but we don't see them on, the wardens don't seem to be on the lake that much. Last year and this year again, we had the fantastic good fortune of being approved for Canada Summer Jobs. That is a federal program. There's no provincial programs that I'm aware of. We applied before to yes, but there's nothing there. Anyway, this Canada Summer Jobs, we applied for several years and got turned down. But in 2021, we were approved. They have very strict criteria as to what is considered eligible. We were approved, and we were approved again this year. It's a very significant grant, as I say, because they provide 100% reimbursement from 30 to 40 hours of work per week for each eligible student they approve. So they pay $15 per hour towards us, towards our expenses. We actually pay 17 plus 4% vacation pay, and of course the daily allowance for the student that supplies the boat and motor. So as Lorraine just pointed out, total cost to run the student program at $17 an hour and all the expenses is over $12,000 a year. But we are actually bringing in close to 12,500 between the two, the 3,000 and the Canada Summer Jobs. So that allows us to increase our balance sheet year to year. And we're very, very hopeful we can continue to garner that approval and keep the students employed and keep our balance sheet kind of balanced. So it's been a very successful program as our first priority, and we've been very fortunate over the years to get good students, and it's just a win-win situation for everybody. So I'm going to call on Clint, who has been our long-standing supervisor. Clint does the hiring, the training, the regular supervision, receives their reports, goes over this interim and final report that they are asked to produce. And I must say, going in, the report that Callum and Matthew did this year has been exemplary. It's probably, I don't want to compare, but I'm saying we've had a lot of very positive comments of the detail they put in, the opinions they put in, and how they captured people's opinions, and they made recommendations. So Clint, if you will, provide us a little background, and then we'll turn it over to Callum and Matthew to just highlight some of what they found. And of course, we have provided the interim report as well. So Clint.
That's great. Yeah, thank you very much, Brian. That's appreciated. Yeah, we've actually been having a great year this year. And interestingly enough, in order to make sure we qualify for the Canada Summer Jobs Program, we increased the number of hours to 30. And so I added in an extra day this year. So that means essentially we have Thursday, Friday, and Mondays for maintenance around the lake. And Saturday and Sunday are what I call walk and talks, where the two students go around and visit and talk to cottagers and homeowners at their camps and all the places around the lake to encourage people to join the LTCA. And this year, it's interesting because Matthew Smith is in James Bay, and the other student, Callum, is up in Camp Conewango. So they have a seasonal campsite up there, and he lives in Redbridge. So the two students are from opposite ends of the lake, and both are local and have all that local knowledge. And Matthew lives almost the entire year on the lake as well. So they were able to use not only knowing people around the lake, but also knowing all the nooks and crannies of the lake for maintenance as well. But they've both been great, and I'll let them tell you a little bit about what's going on. And actually, Matthew's been having some data issues with his phone. So he's here with me now. And in addition, his father, Robert Smith, Page, is here just in terms of tracking for attendance for tonight's meeting. So I'll pass the phone over to Matthew for a minute. And Callum, if you want to, Page, if you could unmute. Callum, are you there?
Yes.
All right, super. So you and Matthew can just say hi and talk a little bit about both the maintenance and the membership.
Hello, everybody. Hope all is well. So first off, I'd like to really thank Robert Smith for all the help he's given us. We've taken down ice shacks and moved large quantities of garbage just over to Lake Talon camp. So we really appreciated that, and I hope you all would consider him as a lake steward at some point. It would be very appreciated. But anyways, it's been very positive with memberships and maintenance. We've made sure that we keep grass wells, chutes, and everywhere else as clean as can be. And we've gotten a lot of feedback from just going around and talking to people that it's been very clean this year. and we're very happy to hear that. I'd say we the most garbage we've gotten from a certain place has been grass wells or the chutes. We pull about maybe two bags of garbage a week out of grass wells, I'd say. Matthew, you'd like to touch up on that?
Oh, yeah, we usually, on average, 2 bags of garbage a week. We ask that you also please do not put any garbage into the, what would they be called? Glacier potholes that have been created from, well, the last ice age that are at the Talon chutes. They're not garbage cans. They're historical. It's a historical site. So that's one of the things I had to just comment on there. Yeah, no, but we cleaned an ice shack. The walk and talks have been awesome. People have been awesome. We haven't gotten many no's, so that's also good. This is also the first year that we hit everybody on the lake. So we visited every single cottage this year, which is awesome. Blueberry, again, Brian, I'm pretty sure you are talking to, who are you talking to about getting maybe a Thunderbox in there?
Yes, I spoke to Warren Verena. He's the acting park superintendent, and I'll just interject there. He knows the issue, and it's been identified by the students and by some of our members down there that it's littered with toilet paper and so on. He says, unfortunately, they're conflicted because there's environmental regulations saying you can't have an outdoor privy within so many meters of the water's edge, which kind of precludes putting one there. But on the other hand, he realized there's definite benefits. So it's in their hands, and we hope that he will come through maybe next year and do that, because they do provide them for grass wells.
Yeah. The one thing I don't really understand about that is, I mean, people are gonna go anyways, so it's kind of easier if there's one specific location for them to go, but that's just my thinking on that.
You're right.
Medora has been very clean. Pretty much no one uses it ever. I mean, well, there is 3 campsites on the island. So if you're coming down, let's say you're coming from Grasswell and you're heading like straight down Grasswell, and then you see the sign. So there's the first campsite right there, and then there's a campsite on, I would say, the right side of the island, and then just at the very back there's another campsite that you can camp at. But again, those look like they haven't been used in a few years. So if you do want to use them, you know, they're there. Just wanted to mention that. And the portage has also been very, very clean. Pretty much never find any garbage there. There has been a few times where we do find, you know, stuff from like a canoe or something, a broken canoe. But it's been pretty good. And whoever put those chairs at Grasswell, we thank you for that. Those people have been seeming to enjoy those, so we thank you for whoever did that. But that's all I have to say.
Yes, you're also at Tillard Lake as well. Maybe you could explain that, Callum and Matthew, where it is and what you find there.
So Tillard Lake, that's another campsite that can be used. You have to go up the North River. Again, that's really tricky. We had my dad bring us up there. Again, you need to go very, very slow. I wouldn't recommend going past like anything bigger than a 14-footer with a 15 horse on it. And make sure you can trim it, because you do need to trim your motor. But go very slow through there. Make sure you have 2 people in the boat, one for spotting and one for driving. But yeah, then when you're coming on from up the kind of North River from Talon, it's going there's gonna be this area of rocks that you're going to see, and you're gonna see Tiller just from a, you're just barely gonna see it. But there's gonna be rocks, and you wanna kind of go right in the middle, and then you wanna go on the right-hand side when you're going up that little inlet. Because it's very weedy in there, and you also wanna make sure the water's high, or you're not gonna be able to go through there. But when you're on Tillard, you need to, it's gonna be in the middle of the lake, and you're gonna head straight down, and then it's gonna be on your right. But yeah, that also hasn't been used in a few years, and we cleaned a whole bunch of old glass up, and there was like 7 garbage bags it took us to clean that up.
Now, Clint, Callum, and Matthew, thank you very much. Do you foresee doing a final report, or I know you provided a very descriptive and thorough interim report. That could be satisfactory. That's your choice, really.
Yeah, they're editing that report now, so there will be a final version. It'll essentially be the same report, but with some additions and updates. So it'll be tweaked, right? And by the way, Matthew gave away, Tillard's my secret lake, so don't go up there. There's no fish there, not worth it at all.
Thanks very much. To me, and we had excellent students last year too, as well. But you know, these are 2 young fellows, only 15 years of age, their first job. We're so proud of what they've done, and they seem to enjoy it. And we're all benefiting, not just the people, the cottagers on the lake or owners on the lake, but there's many people that obviously visit Lake Talon and come to camp, and we're living in a very sanitary and clean condition, safe. And it's thorough work that people like Callum and Matthew do that leaves these sites in such pristine shape. I know John Kelso had a family visiting from Montreal 2 weeks ago, and they certainly had to go down and see the chutes. And they reported back to John. They said there was 2 young fellows there. They were scouring top to bottom. There wasn't a scrap of paper left. There was broken glass that they were picking up individually. He was just amazed the quality of work and thoroughness that Callum and Matthew were doing. So we're very, very proud of both of you.
Yeah,
Any
I would
other
like
comment?
to add a couple of things as well in that. One last item is that, and I would like to thank Dave Humphreys. He made a suggestion to one of the boys related to the membership walk and talks, that they go through the season and talk to all their seasonal campers. And once I heard that, it was like a light bulb, of course, because they picked up a few new memberships at Talon Lake Camp, and Callum talked to Chris up at Camp Conewango, and this past weekend they picked up new memberships through the seasonal campers at Camp Conewango. So that's brilliant. So that's great.
Yes, Callum, tell us about your success on which I was astounded on the Kaibaskong.
So with the Kaibaskong, we got pretty much the whole right side bought memberships. There wasn't a lot of no's at all. Everyone was pretty positive. It was all just kind of feedback on people coming through the tight spots at rapid speeds, which was kind of annoying to them, I guess. But that's one of the concerns they had. And the algae blooms of last year, I'm not sure the water quality how it is this year, but we did do our testing, and yeah, it's been pretty positive down there. We got our most memberships in one day. We set a record of 10 for us that we were trying to beat for the whole season. But yeah, it was very positive. Not a lot of no's, and yeah.
That's great. Okay, thanks very much. Anybody have a comment that they wish to
I'm
make?
glad to hear that about Kaibaskong Bay. We've tried to talk it up over time, and people will act positive with us, and then I hear the next year's meeting they haven't joined. But one thing that may help is that we've had quite a number of sales and have new owners there now. So that they may be joining. Some of the old people who resisted may be gone, but I'm glad to hear, because I'm quite concerned the fact that on our little road, so many of the people are permanent residents and have so much lawns that add to the pollution of the lake. So maybe they'll learn from their association and change their ways.
Thank you.
I just pulled up from the chat. You can see that there are two comments there from Jane Bennett and from William Mountain, thanking the summer students in Clint for doing such a wonderful job.
Great. Thank you very much. You're working till September 3rd, I believe. So there's more good things to come from both Matt and, with Matthew and Callum, yes. Okay, going to move on to item number 6, Blanchard's Landing and boat ramp status. Our position as LTCA is legally, the boat ramp and the dock is the responsibility of Ontario Parks. I will go back about, when we first arrived in the lake, probably in the late 70s, there was a federal dock there, Blanchard's Landing. That's where the name came from. It was a very major facility. You could dock maybe 4 boats along the retaining wall. It was well looked after by the federal government. But back in those days, they made a decision, Oceans and Fisheries, Small Craft and Harbors branch, they made a Canada-wide decision to get out of the small docks like that. And they did that here, they did it in Callander, they did it in Astorville, they did it all across Ontario and Canada. And they just basically come in and dismantled what they had, and they tried to negotiate with various parties to take it over. The townships, Calvin or Bonfield, didn't wish to. And because I guess there was nobody else left, plus the fact that it was a designated major entrance point to Mattawa River Provincial Park, the province of Ontario did take it over, and it is legally, it has been surveyed. There's a narrow strip there that does belong to Ontario Parks. So we've always taken the position that we were offered, I think we were offered back in John Kelso's day, we were offered to get involved, and we I think wisely chose, no, we weren't able to do that. So anyone that and I think everybody's unsatisfied with the condition of it. In my view, it's almost reaching the point of not being safe because some of the flotation is failed and you don't get a level platform there. First, the boat ramp itself is silted in. I've seen many occasions where boats, larger boats and trailers, combined with, say, a little bit lower water than normal, they can't unload or load there. In fact, even our septic system, he tore out his lower unit propeller trying to get out 2 years ago. And more recently, Ontario Hydro came with a large barge. They wanted to put a submarine cable, and they weren't able to launch there either. So it is a problem. The people responsible right now are the superintendent at Samuel de Champlain Provincial Park. As I mentioned previously, the Mattawa North Bay Algonquin First Nations are trying to get support from the feds and the province, and we partnered in this endeavor with them. And I have said on behalf of the association, we could consider limited financial support depending on what the details are of the improvement, and obviously what other parties would bring to the table in terms of funding or work in kind, by the townships or whatever. But we're not at that point yet. And as I said, we had 2 meetings this month, and I am optimistic but there's lots of chance for it to go off the rails. So what has been agreed to so far is that Ontario Parks, they have an internal biologists, environmental planners. They have agreed to undertake what they call a tabletop environmental assessment of the immediate Blanchard's Landing area to determine what can be done there. We had a federal biologist there about 3 months ago, and he said, in his view, the siltation, and because it is a long-held marina, or not a marina, but a launching spot, that he would have no problem approving dredging. So we're hoping this tabletop environmental assessment will set the ground rules for doing that, and we'll go from there. There has certainly been a suggestion that the dock be lengthened to some degree to at least be able to be capable of tying up more than one boat. And also 40 years ago, you could actually park your boat on either side of the dock, but now it's all silted in with cattails. So we will attend to these meetings, support them. The Algonquin First Nation has a kind of a technical advisor, volunteer with municipal experience in writing grants, and he is helping all of us to try to move forward. So what has been suggested at the last meeting is everyone that, including the townships, Ontario Parks, Ministry of Natural Resources, ourselves, sign an agreement in principle to indicate our support for moving ahead so that we can show other levels of government we are together and we feel this is a priority and we're prepared to go forward as one. So to further that end, I've putting on the floor a motion that the Lake Talon Conservation Association, being the LTCA, the board of directors be authorized to enter into an agreement in principle with other interested parties to rehabilitate the Blanchard's Landing dock, the boat ramp, and that would be a priority for many Algonquin First Nations, ourselves, and even the townships. The second part of it is to also look at the rehabilitation of all the heavily silted waterway between Blanchard's Landing and Sharps Creek. That is much more involved environmentally, and that would probably require a consultant with specialty in that field to do it. So we're proposing to enter into an agreement in principle to see where this will lead. This is before any financial commitments are made by any of the parties. So it's just basically showing strength and community support. So I'm placing that motion before us, looking for a seconder. And I think this would be a good time for discussion if anybody wishes to. Let's get the motion seconded if we can.
I'd be happy to second it for dock users and are having more trouble with the conditions there and managing our boat. I seem to bottom out every year.
Yes, thank you, Mary. I take some confidence in my position on behalf of the LTCA because of the survey that we did there a month or so ago, where we actually broached that subject, and certainly the vast majority indicated they weren't satisfied with the condition. And certainly the vast majority of those responding, and there was a fairly significant response, indicated that they could approve of some form of financial commitment, depending on what others do as well. We're not going this alone. That's obvious because it's a very, very big project, and it's going to require monies over and above any local contribution. It's going to require federal and provincial help. I open the floor.
Alan Ross has raised his hand.
Hi there. Yeah, just a couple of questions. The biologist, the federal one that you mentioned, is he willing to put something down on paper to the effect of what you said he said?
Yes, he certainly indicated very strongly, but I'd have to go back, and we actually did try to get that confirmed in writing, and we
Yeah.
weren't successful in doing that yet.
I mean, obviously
Um,
not an official report, but just, a letter
Yes.
indicating his, it gives a little bit of weight to it as well.
Yes, Alan, I think I can speak to that kind of. But the attendees from the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority at last meeting and the one previous, they were very pro in terms of what can be done there. They said, you have to go through the hoops. There will be some restrictions on time of when it can be done, the methods, where the silt is disposed of, but they didn't give any indication. They were very positive that this can be done and that it is not that big a process, other than once you start moving beyond Blanchard's Landing and then moving over through the marina and over towards Sharps Creek and out into the Kybaskan. That is a bigger involvement. So the conservation authority said they will try to help lead this along with parks. Now, the reason why there has to be some form of initial environmental assessment, because the park itself is a protected area. So that just automatically says they've got to do an EA. So
Yeah, but it feels like that's more commitment from and more interest from the park than I've certainly had the impression from what I've read. Even though
yes,
I know they don't have money to spend on it
Yes.
because of the nature of the park, but
yes.
it feels positive.
Yes, the superintendent was actually fairly straightforward in saying the dock is not in good shape for various reasons. And he was also concerned about it being used by emergency responders, such as the ambulance. So he says he doesn't have any money, just to go in there and fix it right now or replace it. To me, it can't be fixed. It's got to be replaced.
Yeah.
But he was give us some kind of consolation that yes, he would be supporting it. But on
Great.
the other hand, he's an acting park superintendent. He doesn't know how long he's going to be there. And of course, budget is so tough these days. But there was some very good news through the federal MP, Anthony Rhoda, via the First Nations, that he thinks there's money available at the right point. So that gives us a lot of confidence that it can be done.
Great, thanks.
If we're gonna write a letter, can you give us the name of the park super? It used to be a woman and obviously it's changed.
Yes, Tracy Starr used to be park superintendent. She's been seconded about 3 years ago in the COVID, she was transferred to I don't know which ministry in Toronto. Whether she is going to return or not is unknown at this point. Warren Verena, there it is right there. Warren Verena, Warren.Verena, VERINA @ontario.ca. He looks after a multitude of parks in this area. Like I think he told me 15 or 16 various facilities. But he's quite aware of this one. He's been there many times. So there's really nobody that's opposing it. It's just getting it done and getting through the hoops. And there's no assurance that we're going to get there, but all we can do is try and go as a team. Yes, John Kelso.
And then Scott has a question as well after John.
Yeah, Brian, I would just say that next Wednesday, the new director of the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority and some other heavyweight are making a tour of the Blanchard's Landing and right by Dave Humphreys and right up to Sharps Creek. So that is a really good thing. And this was at their initiation. So there's a lot of interest, and as Brian is doing so well, we're walking with them. and encouraging and pushing, as much as we can. And, so that is a really good development, that they drive from North Bay, come down here. And Brian and I are taking them out in our pontoon boat next Wednesday at 10:30.
As far as the finances go, the board and I have discussed that. We're very cognizant of the fact that we cannot just throw money at this. We don't have it. We're in a good financial shape. I would foresee it. I think the board generally agrees with me that we could maybe win for 4 years at maybe $2,500 a year, maybe 10,000 in total over 4 or 5 years. That would be our maximum. And that's all dependent on keeping a good financial cash flow with Canada Summer Jobs. That's key for us. If we can continue Canada Summer Jobs, then we can continue to grow our bank account ever so slightly every year. But we're not talking. And the Algonquin First Nation, they've suggested they will build it, and the expense is going to come in on the dredging portion of it for sure. Even the localized dredging, because it needs to. It's a fairly major job there, just at the landing.
And Scott has a question.
Yeah, just and for, as Clinton mentioned, for attendance, Dale Chadburn is here with me as well. Just for
yes, thank you.
Got it. Thank you.
But also, yeah. So just I had a couple of questions. So one is, there has been a lot of talk over the years about the dock and that area. And I'm wondering, is we sort of lumped in the dock with a whole bunch of extension out to Sharps Creek. So there's two, I don't know if we see that as one initiative or two initiatives. And I would put a question out there that says, if we focus on the dock area, is that more likely to get approval and funding than lumping it into a more extensive dredging through to Sharps Creek? The other part I would say is that around the scope and scale of the dredging, if we're going to go to Sharps Creek, and I'm not sure what the reasoning is to go in there, but would you then think to extend it to do the mouth of the Kaviskon as well? Like if that's another area of concern around transportation for people. So I guess I'm very clear as to why we need new dock and the surrounding area. And then I'd like to, initiate some discussion about what that means when we talk about Sharps Creek, like how extensive is that going to be? And do we want to suggest other areas if we're going to do that?
To answer your question, I certainly see it as two parts. In fact, I recommended that strongly, and I think the chief and a few others agreed that Blanchard's Landing should hopefully be done next year. That would be the goal. That cannot wait 3, 4, 5 years, in my view. And I think everybody was fairly unanimous that can proceed on its own. And the reason why that's maybe a little bit easier to some degree is because it's strictly Ontario parks. But once you get into beyond Blanchard's Landing going westerly, then you change ministries. Then you're involved with Ministry of Northern Development, what we used to call Ministry of Natural Resources. Now it's Ministry of Northern Development, Mines, Natural Resources and Forests. They are the party that look after Crown land and make other approvals environmentally beyond what the park boundaries are. So to answer your question about the Kaviskon mouth, yes, that was identified by our kind of working committee there about 6 months ago when they tentatively tried to reach out to an environmental assessment firm. That was shown as what we thought was a reasonable boundary, that you should consider all that marshy area because of navigation, heavy siltation, and also the detriment of the fish spawning that used to be very active at Sharps Creek. So that is a much bigger scale for assessing. and developing what the alternatives may be. Blanchard's Landing is, I think, much more straightforward.
Okay, I guess further to that, Brian, should we split that into two separate initiatives, or should, like, from our perspective, or we just see it as one blanket motion?
I'd recommend the single blanket one, because we don't, like, the Algonquin First Nations have a priority on the fish habitat, the siltation, more than just, and we do too. So I don't see us going down two separate roads. I think you know, the parties can deal with both at the same time, but what one gets implemented first depends on financing and how quickly the approvals may come. So no, I'd recommend it stays as one, and hopefully the townships, you know, I can see why they don't want any part of it, even though their residents use it, and it's a very big tourism attraction. But nobody wants to take on new responsibilities these days when it's so tight money. But there's ways that they can support it. What has to happen, we discussed that last Friday, is because of liability insurance, it is almost the only way to do it is to have Ontario Parks maintain ownership of it, because they have blanket liability insurance for every piece of crown land in the property in the province. And secondly, it is the primary access to Mattawa River Provincial Park, so that they need to be involved, and they need to go and get some money and take responsibility, in my view, too. They just can't pawn it off on somebody else. It's their asset, and they agreed to take it over. How I'm sure they could walk away from it, but I don't think they will. And that's why we need to kind of get all this other support from the townships. And a new council is coming in. Municipal councils are going to be elected in October, and they'll take over in January. So this is an ideal time to say, here's what we expect or want. LTCA is already signed on. Ontario Parks is doing their thing. We need the townships to give it their blessing and participate. And when you have everybody going to the MP and the MPP, I think it holds a lot more validity, and that's what I think we should do.
Okay, and then the last, just in closing, so the if we were to participate and make donations and funding, it would be across the broader initiative that you're talking about, which is the government dock, but also the dredging beyond that to wherever that.
I don't think so in my mind. In my personal view, I think our financial capabilities would be stretched to think that we could put in $10,000 to the Blanchard's Landing dock and boat ramp. I don't see us financially participating in any bigger scale project. That's just my view, because I think you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars there.
Yeah, time as well. Yeah. Okay.
Uh,
Thank you.
We have a question from the ponds. You are on mute.
There we go.
Oh, perfect.
So just a comment to clarify, agreement in principle does not mean any financial contribution. So by approving this motion that you put forward, Brian, we're not committed to spending. We're committed to supporting the concept. I would just like to clarify that
correct.
for everyone.
Yes, we have not. I have said at these meetings that, you know, we could certainly consider some financial commitment. It's going to be small because we have a small budget, not too much expendable dollars. So our contribution is going to be very limited. It's not going to carry the day, that's for sure. We're going to be a very, very small portion of the total, and we're going to undoubtedly restrict it just to Blanchard's Landing work. So that's where I see it going. And it could take years before I could see that Blanchard's Landing is fairly cut and dried in terms of the cost. But the other one is, it'll take years to resolve what should be done, how it's to be done, and where the money might come from. And even construction wise, that's no easy task. Dredging a lake, portions of the lake, this is no easy task. So we'll see where it goes. I'm hopeful. Though.
Okay, thank you. And I would urge us to call the question.
Okay, yes. Are we all in approval then? I think I have that sense that at this point, we're not making any commitments other than joining in, which we have been doing for actually 6 years now. And we're trying to move forward as one. So thanks very much. I'll consider the motion carried then.
Okay.
Oh, one of my favorite topics. I'll be brief. Actually, this past summer, I think most of you agree, the water level, because of lack of rainfall, the ministry has been fairly steady with their control of the lake. I actually didn't speak, but I emailed Graham Hewitt from MNDRF. He replied to me and he said, yes, it's been a good year as far as they're concerned. They've, by and large, all of their operating dams, they've kept them within their targets. It was surprising to me that even in the virtual drought that we did have, there was enough water coming in to keep the level fairly static. We do not, as an LTCA or me as president, we do not give any direction or make requests to the ministry. They've rebuffed that many times, including 6 months ago. They stand on their operating principles of when the dam was established, that they're trying to operate it between 9.85 and 10.15. Those of you who have followed the water level from the automatic recording machine, generally it's been in the 10 point, just over the 10.0 most of the summer. It has dropped a couple of times, but it hasn't gone up into the high range. The kind of thing that's changed this year is that the ministry has indicated, that's the so-called Ministry of Natural Resources, they've indicated that Ontario Parks, which is part of the Ministry of Environment and Parks Conservation, they will soon be taking over responsibility for managing water levels on both Turtle and Talon Chutes dams, as they are within the boundaries of Mattawa River Provincial Park. So that was a revelation, and we didn't kind of expect to see that coming. They haven't said what it's going to happen or how the transition is going to occur, but it's something that looks like it's coming down the pipe. So that's about all I can say there is, I think, you know, and I think, you know, seen from my previous opinions on this, I understand certainly that there's different views on what the water level should be maintained at. If you follow it as closely as I do, which is almost daily, and watch the screenshots or take screenshots of the levels, they do appear to be coming to the dam about twice a week generally, adding logs, taking logs away. But this year it doesn't seem like there's the radical up and down. But I think that's mostly because we haven't had major rate events. So that's about all I can say on water level management. It's in their hands, and it looks to be a change of philosophy that they think because it's within the park staff should manage it. I don't know if I agree with that, because you're losing all that experience, whether you like what they've done or don't. experience still counts. And but hopefully it won't be just thrown to Ontario Parks without some good training. And the other thing that they did add is several weeks ago, Graham told me they did go in there for 2 days and put in a much higher quality boom system to prevent people from going over the dam. It broke a couple of times in previous years, and they've got a much more substantial. I haven't seen it. I don't know if anybody's been down there, but they did report that they feel much more confident on this new system they've installed.
There's just
Any
a comment in the chat, Brian, from Clint, just saying that since July 24th, it has been over target about 3 inches fairly consistently. Lots of rain.
Okay, I've certainly seen it in the 10.05 range and so on, yes. But I've said before, they can't be there every day. It's their highest priority. You heard me say that before. But when you add logs, you're not just going to come in and put one log in. You're going to, you got to anticipate what the weather is, inflows, you make judgments, and knowing that you just don't have the staff and the budget to come and do a minor adjustment every day. So we have to live with that. Any other comments on the water level management?
Scott has his hand up.
Hi, yeah, I guess just observing our back and forth with the ministry individually and through the association over the years around water levels, and our sort of inability to kind of get any movement from them beyond what they state as their mandate. It doesn't seem to be effective for us to, to be thinking of ourselves being represented by LTCA. Would you agree that maybe this is something that we want to say we're not representing the association in terms of any discussions around water with the ministry, or do you think that we should continue to discuss that as a possible option of communication? Because it's caused a lot of friction and to not much result.
Yes, because there's a major difference of opinion among a lot of the residents as to what is it. Even if they could set a water level, there is no agreement as to what that water level would be. If this was a bathtub and you choose what level you want, there would be no agreement. I can guarantee that right now, based on my experience, that there would be no agreement on what the desirable water level would be. There's people that want higher water consistently, and there's people that want lower water consistently. I've talked to Graham. In fact, the last time I did call him. I was on the phone with him 45 minutes. He said, Brian, even in the same morning, I will get 4 and 5 calls from one group that wants lower water. The same morning or afternoon, I will get a fairly significant number of people that want higher water. So they are left trying to make their decisions based on various factors: weather, inflows, navigation, and obviously feedback from individuals. That's how it's been left. People make their opinions known. They make their decisions. If we were unanimous, then I'm sure they would maybe take that into consideration. I don't know. But there is no unanimity, and I don't know what, and I didn't want to survey this because it is a divisive topic, and that's why I put it to bed in terms of, because it was getting very upsetting to me and others. constantly challenging what the ministry are doing and saying, you know, I'm supporting one, I'm supporting the other. That's not the case. And as you say, Scott, there is no level that is going to keep even a significant portion happy, because I don't know what the split is, but there's a good portion, as I'm repeating myself, that wants low water all the time, and there's some that want high water. And the higher water is basically, in my view, based on navigation, where you've got probably 75 or 100 cottages that require water access. And well, I don't even know if Camp Conowongo can be considered a marina anymore. Certainly the biggest marina has got some major issues at some times a year, getting boats in and out or getting gas. So, and there's other areas on the lake where people run aground and they prefer higher water, but others want lower water for more beach, less erosion, and also because of the living environment, the fauna that inhabit the edge of the lake. So I don't know what the answer is. We're lucky to have a dam. You look at other places, including the Trent system, the Great Lakes, the water's going up and down. In fact, they go for years with one extreme or the other. We operate within a fairly tight parameter, but at certain points, the water comes in here very quickly. You can see that if you watch the graph. I'm talking within hours of a major rainfall, you see it going up. And they've got to respond. And as I said before, unfortunately, we couldn't change their mind about working on weekends or vacation days. They are prohibited from working overtime. So you're stuck with the decisions they make on Thursday afternoon and implement Friday. And if it happens to be a long weekend, you're going to wait till Tuesday. They have told us this is their highest priority of, I think, 14 or 15 dams, and I believe them. So we tried to make.
Sorry, I was thinking like, you carry on. I didn't mean to interrupt. I thought you were finished. Sorry.
No, I am finished, Joe.
Okay. Yeah. And I think that consistently, you know, what you come back with is that, you know, regardless of what we ask for, they say we're going to operate within the 1 foot. And, you know, so there doesn't appear to be much influence from us that we can bring to bear on what that water level would be. The reason I was thinking about it is maybe we should take it off the mandate, you know, or even as a topic of discussion, or should we just continue to monitor it? And, but I think we should state that we really don't have, as an association, any influence on that water, because I think there's some members of the association that feel that the association does have or could have some influence, and it seems to have proven out that we do not. Would you agree with that?
Oh, definitely. That's number one point on my list, and I keep saying that. They say they're doing their best. I believe they are within certain limitations, including, as I said, no weekend work. They've got, you know, it's a big operation when they come down and remove logs. Now, sometimes, you know, when they remove, you think they remove too many logs because obviously the water drops very quickly. I mean, within hours, it's going down because they've removed 6 or 8 logs. I'm sure we all wish they just feather it and do something every morning, you know. And of course, they rely on weather forecasts too. And sometimes these weather forecasts are drastically wrong. They might be regionally okay, but the weather is very spotty sometimes, and we've had a lot of rain events that miss us.
Yeah.
And they've made decisions. Okay, we've got a weather warning. We're expecting 50 or 70 millimeters of water this weekend. We are going to take some logs out, and then water goes down, and the rain doesn't come, then we're down low. So, but I agree, they do not, what they say and what they do is somewhat different. They rarely take the water down to 9.85 during navigation season. Rarely. If they did, I would say half the marina wouldn't move their boat. Because 9.85 is low, very low. They do in October. Even then, people were complaining that they couldn't go hunting or they couldn't close up their cottage in late October, or they couldn't launch their boat at Blanchard's Landing. So there's no way anybody's going to be happy. It's just one of those things you have to accept. And it affects some people much more than others. And I understand that.
Brian, we also have a question from the ponds and then one from Mary Mars. So on to the ponds. And ponds, yep, there you go, perfect.
Okay, it's Marcia Pond, and I just wanted to add that we've been here all summer and we're very concerned during July when it was fluctuating so much up and down on our dock. But August has been so much more positive, but I guess you're saying that that's because we haven't had as much rain. Is that correct?
Yes, in my view, the drought season, in which it's, we've gone sometimes almost 3-4 weeks without really heavy rain, they have managed to hold the water. You can see the charts, 7 days, it's almost flat. So there is sufficient water coming in from the various rivers and tributaries that could keep the positive flow. I never really, they always told us that that wasn't the case, but I certainly think that this year has proven that there's enough water coming in that they can hold it. Even with the winds, evaporation, that's what they were always concerned about, that they didn't want the water to get too low and they go into an extreme drought period with evaporation and they could never bring the water back up.
Well, it's been very, very much better this month.
Yes, I agree.
And a question from Mary Mars.
Mike, I have a question.
Oh, Mary, I think you just muted yourself again.
Oh,
There you go. Good.
is there a public date that we know the lake's gonna go down for the fall so we can get our boat out ahead of time?
Good question.
No, not that I'm aware of. I don't know how they decide that. I think most people seem to agree they use a lack of a better term, they pulled the plug a little too soon. I know Chris James and a few others last year were very almost high and dry there at Blanchard's Landing. They couldn't get their boat out or in. So, and every year, I guess I don't know how they decide that, manpower or long range forecasts. But a lot of people don't feel they take enough sensitivities to the environmental, the living species as well. And there is fall spawning as well as spring spawning.
Yes, because if I recall last year, it seemed to go down an exceptional amount and relatively early. So I imagine there were people caught in bad circumstances.
Yes. Yeah, I've said just to confirm for those people who are new, I have access, and a few others may have access to the recordings, the water levels. I don't take screenshots. I don't publish them anymore because it just was getting divisive and bringing on a lot of criticism, because obviously when they put a log in or pull a log out, I mean, it goes up and goes down very sharply, and on a scale of a graph, it looks like nobody knows what they're doing, but it just the vertical scale makes it look like, in some cases, the water does go up a foot. It has, But that's why I'm just not interested in publishing that anymore. In fact, they said that they are giving serious thought to removing that from the public view, but I prevailed upon them to keep it. But I've told them I won't send out the links because they can change them if they wish to. So I do try to take a screenshot so I have a record kind of every week throughout the year.
And John
This is
Kelso has a question as well. Sorry.
Brian, I was just going to add that, some of us were here when the current dam was built, and they did studies on the lake, and determined what would be the normal level, and that was set at 10.0. And, when the dam was built, Rudy Teal, who lived on Talon Lake Road, he was contracted to manage the logs and to maintain the level of the lake, within certain parameters. And he did a wonderful job. There were virtually no complaints. But then the M&R decided that they would take the work over, I guess, largely when Rudy Teal couldn't do it, and he eventually passed away. But Warren tells me at one of the earlier meetings I was able to attend that he is quite familiar to having, a contract with somebody, to manage the logs at the lake within, what you were talking about, 10.15 and 9.85. And if they do that, and if the dredging is done around the dock, and there's deeper water, to bring our boats in and out and so forth, then it could be very, very good, for all of us. Now, there still may be people on the lake, who still feel the water's way too high, but it was designed, the dam was designed, and we were down there when they were building it at 10.0. That was the target level, plus or minus. And so maybe that should be our basic position, is if they would maintain the lake within their own guidelines, the level of the lake within their own guidelines, we would all stand up and cheer. But anyway, that's just some thoughts.
I think we should move on to the next topic if we can. Water quality testing. Clint, give us a brief summary there.
Hey, Brian, if you don't mind, sorry, just the comment on John Kelso's comment. John, just what you just brought up, we did put a motion forward in 2019 to bring forward to the ministry that we would ask them to maintain it at the 10.0 level. So that's something we've already tried.
Right. Yeah, thanks, Clint.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Brian. So was it water sampling you were looking for?
Yes, just a brief.
Right. Sure. Okay. So we are continuing something we've done for many years, which is part of the FOCA Lake Partner Program. And a few years back, we used to sample in 2 different locations. Now we only sample in 1. And I was told that was a cut, right? A financial cut. And that other agencies monitor different locations in the lake. So we've been sampling Kabiskong for the last few years. And when I did go, basically we provide samples for total phosphorus level and also chloride and calcium concentration. But phosphorus is the big one. And that one is connected to the nutrient status of the lake. So if you have too much phosphorus, you can have algae blooms, right? So Talon, pretty much our results, and the most recent result I have, just given the limitations that I ran into online, is 2019 with a phosphorus level of 14 micrograms per liter. That is right in the middle. The low is 10, the high is 20 for a mesotrophic lake, which is the kind of middle. When you get above 20, it's a eutrophic lake, which comes with much more frequent algae blooms. Our water clarity readings on the Secchi disk are roughly 2 meters, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more. And that gives you an idea, like, again, increases in phosphorus can decrease water clarity. And the idea with the sampling, it looks at the impacts of shoreline development, climate change, and other stresses. What I also know is that, and this continues to be true, other parts of the lake have a level of roughly 7 micrograms per liter of phosphorus instead of 14. So the Kavascong coming in is much richer in nutrients and phosphorus than the rest of the lake. So there we are.
Thanks very much, Clint. That's an excellent, concise explanation of what you're doing and what the results are. We do have the results on our website, but we need to update those. There is a considerable history that is available online through the Lake Partner Program. Okay, the next topic is Federation of Ontario Cottage Associations. I just say, if Ken is there, he has provided a written report that we did put in. FOCA is a very progressive organization. I don't know how many cottage associations there are, but they have a staff. They do excellent websites. They do a lot of webinars. In fact, I'm just going to be posting in the next few days some upcoming webinars. Any member of the LTCA is automatically a member of FOCA. So if you want to sign up for any of their webinars, the one on cottage succession was excellent. It's well done. But I will post their update. They just actually sent it out today, kind of their late summer update. We do pay into FOCA, so much per member. We also get the insurance. Our liability insurance is arranged through the designated insurance agent that's approved by FOCA. So it's an excellent source of a lot of valuable information. I encourage you to go on their website and look through. And that's why I occasionally post on our Facebook page their links. So Ken has provided a report, and there it is. And there's Ken right there behind his finger.
I just have an update. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Ken. Go ahead.
Okay. Internet access. There's now a service from Starlink called RV, which is $30 more than the residential service, but you can turn it off at any time and there's no charge. It's $170 a month and it's available everywhere on Lake Talon. And you just go online and turn it off and you owe nothing for as long as you want. When you turn it back on, it's a minimum 30 days at $170. But this is ideal for people who can't see the net spectrum tower. And I'll update that first item there with that information. You're supposed to be getting between 5 and 100 megabits per second in the center of the lake, and at the extremities of the lake, you're supposed to be able to get much higher speeds, which would be Rice Bay, McCool Bay, and east of Grasswell Point. Apparently, the performance is better in those areas than it is in the middle of the lake. I'm not sure exactly why. And I'm not sure that the residential at $140 a month is available in the middle of the lake. It appears, according to their map, to be available east of Grasswell Point and up in McCool and Rice Bays. Whether they need to put more satellites up or not, it just says you're on a wait list if you're in the middle of the lake for the residential. But the RV is available everywhere on Lake Talon, and there's no waiting. It's available right now, and you can turn it off. So if you had it on for 6 months and shut it off for 6 months, it will cost you maybe just over $1,000 for the year. Whereas Net Spectrum would be around $740 for the year. And so quite frankly, we have unlimited internet access with both of those services everywhere on Lake Talon.
Thanks, Ken. Yes, it's more and more people working away from home or working at the cottage. It's almost a requirement nowadays. We have Net Spectrum here. We've had it for 2 or 3 years at 5 megabytes per second. That's been very useful. In fact, we just as an aside, we actually are streaming now our TV from our home account in Kitchener and got rid of the satellite. But I know my neighbor, there he is, John Kelsall, has the Starlink service, and there's another one up in Greens Bay. John is getting outstanding numbers, I think in the 175 megabytes per second, which is blistering fast from his small dish. John?
Yes, I installed the Starlink satellite system here at my cottage. And in fact, Brian, we had up to 200 MIPS down per second last weekend and 30 up. And so minimum is about 100 down and 15, 20 up. It varies depending on the weather, but it's reliable. It works. It cost me $158 a month all in, but it is a fantastic system.
Anything else, Ken? We get an excellent report on taxes, other issues. I think.
Yeah, well, the taxes are about $720 this year. There'll be $1,000 next year, and I don't know if they're going to raise that ceiling for unorganized townships or not. But and then there's hydro. I don't know what's happening in the hydro. Nothing's happened yet, but it's claims it's going to go up another $50 a month. We'll see. Other than that, it's all there. But I'll give you an update for Starlink, the RV service. I'll send that to you next week.
Yes, I think the Terrians up in James Bay have the RV package, which allows them to pick it up and take it with them to another location if they so choose. And the fact is, as you pointed out, those people that sign up for that premium service, they get immediate delivery. The others go on a waiting list. So there's advantages, and of course, being able to suspend it is money in your pocket as well.
Yes, and at no charge.
Yes. Yes, Net Spectrum, just for you, it's $20 a month to suspend it up to per month, up to 6 months. That's what we pay.
Yes, I just got it in here last week, and it's terrific compared to Rogers, which was failing constantly.
Okay, thanks, Ken. We'll move on to the next topic. Marcia Pond is with us. Marcia looks after land use reports. She has a network that she talks to, including the Conservation Authority, the Nipissing Forest Management, and so on. So Marcia or Barry, if you're there, I think it's fairly quiet, but I'll let you report.
Thanks, Brian. The people that replied were Francisco Murphy, as you see here, North Bay District from Nipissing Forests. He's M&R, and said the closest harvest operations are on Ulrich Road, Forest Access Road. No replies from Champlain Park, M&R, or North Bay Mattawa Conservation. But then I did get a reply from the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority from Valerie Murphy, advised she's issued 4 development interference with wetlands and altercations to shorelines and watercourses permits for all activities in and around Lake Talon, and that pertained to septic or gray water permits. And she's the regional officer for the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority. And the other thing I thought was that I guess it's up to all of us to be watchful of land use surrounding our cottages, i.e. cottages excessively clearing land, removing sand from beaches, etc. It affects all our lake quality. Okay, thanks. I'm enjoying the meeting. That's all I have.
Thanks, Marcia. Communications, I think we've made our, we are a multi-media organization. I was using Facebook almost exclusively for a while and very limited email. But that survey we did earlier this year indicated that a large proportion of our members do like the emails. And fortunately, we do have a very accurate and up-to-date email list of over 200 people, almost 230. Lorraine's new system and the system I'm using, we actually welcome more than one email address per cottage. We can look after two, so we can send, and which I did today again. The emails go out, and we have a very the MailChimp gives me a report. For example, even in the first 45 minutes this afternoon at 4:18, we had over 70 people look at that email, which was just a reminder. We also have the Facebook, which is very useful. It's cheap, there's no cost. And we get a lot of responses there on some topics. We probably get 700-800 views. So that's very powerful. And of course you can, it's quick and people can comment. Well, I shouldn't say that. They have to send me a comment. It's kind of convoluted the way that it's set up, but it works well. And we also have our long established website. Kelly Wallace and Jason Samard are now our web persons, and they've updated it. We've signed a 5-year contract at much lower cost than we were previously paying. And I think Kelly and Jason would like to upgrade it with some recommendations coming in from the board and others to what people would like to see. But it's now stable, and I think we're covering, a multitude of ways of communicating with our members and other interested parties. Okay, we'll move on to septic. Very short and sweet. Last fall, we had Muskoka Septic Services from Parry Sound. They have a environmentally approved barge system where they come to each dock that wants the service and pump out the septic tank. They're very experienced people. They take that septic waste they pump out, take it over to Blanchard's Landing, then they pump it into a septic hauling truck that's approved, and it's dumped at an approved site. Last year was the 3rd year that they've come. We're looking to schedule that service probably every 4 to 5 years. Last year we had 29 or 30 septic tanks pumped out. I have records probably of maybe 45 tanks. Some people don't choose to do it as frequently as others. So that's why we're trying to kind of get on a cycle of every 4 to 5 years. Any questions on that? Okay, dock numbers. I don't know when, I think we had 2 rounds, maybe 15 or 20 years ago of the dock numbers. George McClellan looked after it, but we've had a request for other people on water access to get a dock number. George has a map where he has everybody potentially numbered. So I think I have a list of about 8. I'm going to try to move that ahead the next month. I'm going to contact George, and some of the numbers are fairly obvious what numbers they should be assigned because of adjacent dock numbers, but there's a few that I will have to have George advise as to what numbers should be assigned to these properties. We expect the blue sign with the white numbers will be about $35. So I have about 8 or 10. I don't know if the students encountered anybody, but if anybody wants a dock number, there's the email, laketaloncontact@gmail, and we'll try to get that going and get them produced. If not in September, available for the spring. Next topic, please. I don't know if Dave's on the line. Fish stocking, I just don't have any background on. I don't know if the ministry has stocked the lake annually or not. Does anybody have any knowledge on that? Okay, we'll move on. There's your officers. As we approved back in 2015, we have 5 of us that are kind of the operating directors. Then we have a number of other people like Mike Myers has been doing the financial review annually for many years. We have various lake stewards like Dave Humphreys and Chris James, Rick Miller. We could actually use another lake steward or two. Hopefully maybe Robert Smith would come on board. We'd like to have every area represented. You've heard from Ken Davies. Ken's really been a focal watchdog for us. Kelly and Jason do our website.
Robert
Militia.
says yes, he'll be a lake steward.
Oh, Willie, thank you.
Absolutely.
Oh, great. And thank you for what you've done this year. Kind of having a really intimate knowledge of the lake and being proactive. Our students a couple of years ago got a fish hut that was abandoned on the South Shore, but looks like you found another one there, and some bed liners and truck frames, everything. So thank you.
Summer. You're most welcome, Brian.
Good. Okay, great. We've covered the internet service options. This last few years has really been improved service. I'd certainly like the next spectrum, only because I have on Shields Bay, we have a direct line of sight. You have to have that. The Starlink does require almost a vertical, you can't, it requires clear sky. I think for 110 degrees or thereabouts, there is a slight tilt to the north, looking at Mr. Kelsol's and the Greens. We did hear from an installer from Sudbury through John Kelsall that the Starlink can be used to network among close neighbors. So that is being looked at. So Starlink does have a little higher initial capital cost, but if neighbors could actually form their own network there, that could bring everything down. And of course, the capacity is enormous. So I think that's something that may be on the horizon. And it could be a lot more competitive if it was shared by 5 or 6 people versus everybody having their own. So it's improving, but you do need access. If you're heavily forested, you're obviously in difficulty. Next, please. This is a new agenda item. The Ontario government has passed legislation a year or so ago that all Ontario not-for-profit corporations, which includes Lake Talon Conservation Association, must comply with this new legislation over the next 3 years. You need to update all the information on the Ontario Business Registry, which we have done. That took a little work there. And the biggest one is we need to draft new corporate articles and bylaws. And there is draft sample kind of boilerplate ones that we're going to look at and see if they meet our needs. Both Lorraine and myself did receive online instruction through FOCA for this. It's a significant undertaking. I don't know if anybody wants to volunteer or has got experience in that area, but it's something that we are hopeful to work on over the winter. Whether we'll have it, it'll have to come before the AGM. One point that was made is every member, and we've never been too stringent on members, or non-members participating in the AGM, but it might be a little more follow the rules and how you announce your AGM. And the big thing I think will be a quorum. How many people you need to have registered at the annual general meeting for the meeting to be valid. That could be an issue, and that's one reason why we decided to embark upon the virtual Zoom meeting this year, because that is permitted. In fact, my condominium in Kitchener and others, they've been forced to use virtual meetings, and the law has been kind of relaxed or modified to allow that. So it looks like a big piece of work, but it's supposed to be done by law, so we'll have to give it our best effort and see what we can do over the next 10 or 12 months. Anybody else part of any other nonprofit corporations that could add some background or assistance, sir? Okay, we'll move on to the next topic. This is,
Brian?
yes,
Sorry, just to go back to, there was a chat. There was a message in the chat from Brian Bellafuel. I'm not exactly sure if I pronounced that right. I apologize, Brian, if I did not. Brian has also put his name forward to be a lake steward. You had said
oh,
that
excellent.
for 1 or 2, and so Brian has also put his name forward. So I wanted to bring that to your attention.
Great. And I think that's great to have experienced people at all parts of the lake looking for various things, not to act as police, but if they see something that needs attention to, hazards on the lake, we can publicize it, concerns they have. I think it's always good to have people around the lake that can be our eyes and ears.
Is there a
That's not it.
representative on Kybeskong Bay?
I don't think we do.
Okay. I don't know what this role entails. I guess I'd need to see some information.
I'd have to actually probably rely on the FOCA. I think they have job descriptions for various lake associations. We could check that, Mary.
And there's going to be these screen things that we're seeing. We're going to be able to access those after.
Yes, it's a part of the recording.
Because
And
I just saw a glance something about these sea-doos and how far they had to be from shore. Well, they're certainly not complying with those rules in Kybeskong Bay.
yes, and I think that's the next couple of topics. So we'll move on to
Okay.
topic. Yep. Clint, and of course, when we're on Federation of Cottage Associations, everybody's got their website on there. And it's very good to go and look at what other people are doing, because some associations are much bigger than ours. Some of them charge a lot more. I know this Lake of Bays, for example, they charge $65 a year, but they're into many more activities than we are because of their population and so on. But Clint brought this to our attention that it might be very advisable for us to develop our own message like this and tailor it to Lake Talon. Good boating etiquette, what you should be aware of, what are some of the rules and regulations that you should abide by. We could, and of course, they also have a map that I don't know if we would need to do that, but their map is very useful because of where it shows the marinas, some of the hazard areas. It names the bays, which a lot of people even here, we don't know that.
Over many years of the students talking to people around the lake, boating behavior, and more specifically poor boating behavior, is always consistently one of the top conversations that they have, right? And concerns that people express to our students. But I retired about a year ago and built a house just outside of Huntsville, and we're near Lake of Bays, and there's a boat launch that I can use a few kilometers down the road. And what I noticed is Lake of Bays had a little brochure station with a map of the lake on it on one side, which has a qualifier not to use for navigation, but basically all the names of places where you can get fuel, where there's boat launches, and on the other side, like a welcome to boating with all kinds of good, basically education in terms of boating behavior, right? Slow down near shore. The fact that there is a provincial speed limit of 9 kilometers an hour within 30 meters of shore, watching your wake, things like narrow water bodies and rivers, reducing your speed and wake and all of that stuff, right? But it would be pretty inexpensive to put together our own version of this. And I actually did a quick check online to buy you know, the little plastic brochure dispensers that you mount on a pole, and they're like $20–30 a piece. So even if it was vandalized, it wouldn't be a big deal to replace.
Yes, and
And
we
we could talk to the marina operators like Dave and Nancy and up at Conowango, and they could have this piece of paper to give out to people too, right? That come to the lake, as well as posting it, say, at the government dock and up in the Kabasgong or wherever we think might be appropriate.
yes, I heartily endorse Clint's suggestion. I think the other directors do too. We can take what the Lake of Bays have done, modify it to our own purposes here, and distribute it widely. And I think it will make an impact, even if it affects, you know, the very few that kind of don't know the rules. I think we can do an education program here. So I think it's full steam ahead on this, Clint.
Mhm,
Thank
great.
you.
I
Lake-
thought I would bring it to the meeting because it's a nice way of education, right? People will pick it up. Hey, there's a map of the lake on it, right? And so there's usefulness there, plus the welcome to boating and, you know, and the education piece in there as well. So I'm willing to work on this over the winter and come up with a draft and hope something we could do next year.
Yes, we approached Lake of Bays. They got back to us very quickly. They were quite flattered that people elsewhere thought their production was of high quality. And they said, by all means, maybe give us a little credit, but yes, go ahead and share the good news. So thank you, Clinton. We'll get going on that.
Okay.
Brian, just to jump in, do we need to do a motion or something to move forward with that in terms of, do we need to have any funding or anything applied to it?
I don't think so, Scott. I think that's kind of on the onus of the directors that we've been briefed on it, and we can talk about it. And I think, as Clint mentions, the investment is rather small and the return can be very significant. So I think it's a goal in my mind for sure.
Okay, thanks.
Now, this is kind of a related topic, hazard wake and speed markers. That did come up in our survey. I don't want to quantify it just as in a certain area. I think there's widespread concern about wakes and speed. And there's also concern about shoals, rocks, and so on. This is kind of governed by Transport Canada, but Transport Canada takes the view that any one individual or association such as ours can undertake this initiative, but what they do require is that you follow their prescribed rules in terms of, you know, the colors, what each sign is meant to depict, and so on. We need to, if we choose to go along this route, we'd certainly have to review it by our liability, because it would. We have told them, they ask these questions every few years. What do you do and what don't you do? And as far as one of their very specific questions is, do you mark hazards? Do you do that kind of posting of signs and that kind of thing? And we've always said, no, we don't. But we do know that there's many locations, there's probably a dozen locations that I can think of, that people have put out bleach bottles or flashing markers or fixed signs that help people navigate safely or keep away from hazards. Whether we should get into that, I think there's a lot of good reasons. The one is obviously cost, and also who's going to do it, because not all of them would stay out 12 months a year. And of course, there's vandalism that has been seen before. We've had that report on the Kabasgong, for example, that people have put up signs there and they've been blatantly torn down right in front of everybody, and, you know, thrown away. So we'd have to be prepared to say there's going to be loss and there's going to be expense. But there's three issues in my mind: liability insurance, what it's going to cost, the cost of putting these in, and of course we need to set criteria. We don't just go and put them in anywhere somebody asks. We have to have a set of policies to guide us. And more importantly, as to who's going to do it. It's not something I feel the students can do because they're here just July and August. And obviously the voting season is much lengthier than their term. So I think it's a good idea. Others do it. We could do it. We just need, I think primarily I would say two things is money and people to do it, because it's not a one person proposition, that's for sure. I open the floor.
Alan
Is-
Ross, hand up.
Hi there. I wonder, with respect to everybody who has issues with wake and speed, if maybe this is the kind of thing we could approach in two parts. One, to mark the hazards, and I'm thinking of things like Sunken Rock and places like that, and look at it from that perspective, and then look at the wake and speed markers sort of as a second half to this kind of a thing. Just in a way to try and maybe break it up as a project into two different pieces. I don't know if that changes anything from the, the liability perspective or, the vandalism thing. Again, just throwing that out as a thought.
Yes, I think that's a good suggestion, that it certainly could be a two-part. The hazards are marked. I'm not taking away from people that do it, because they've obviously go out and do it. Some of them are fairly easily done. And it's probably best maybe suited that it's a standardized sign that Transport Canada recommends, rather than whatever color of bleach bottle or bottle you have to put out there. But they work. There's no doubt about it. I see them going down to Talon Chutes. I see them at Shields Point. There was a request up further up the lake there, a fairly large shoal that people wish to be marked. So yes, it could be a two-part thing: hazards, and then secondly, speed and wake, and that type of. And of course, you need enforcement too. The OPP is probably only here maybe 3 times a year if we're lucky.
Yeah, and that's where the hazards. I mean, there's no one who needs to enforce a hazard. You either pay attention to it or you don't, and damage your boat or your lower end.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Do we have?
Yep, the ponds have a question.
Hi, I applaud the concept, but I know from previous experience when we wanted to put life-saving equipment around Talon Chutes, the dam, the portage area, that the liability issue was the killer in terms of cost. And really, I would just think that if we can encourage individuals to put out the shoal markers on their own, maybe following the guideline that's standardized, and the same with the wake and speed signage. I don't think formalizing incurring liability cost is going to slow any of the people who aren't going to respect privacy and shorelines down. And I think taking on the liability for shoal markers when, as an association, once if they go missing, is just too big a risk and cost. So encourage volunteers to do the shoal markers, encourage affected property owners to put out signage, and you're preaching to the choir here, and we're not really going to solve the irresponsible people, but we can help the ones who with the shoal markers, I believe. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Barry. I think that other initiative that Clint's brought to us from Lake of Bays, that can accomplish a lot of what the actual signs would do. Maybe not necessarily in terms of the hazards, but in terms of people's behavior. I think we could start with that very economically, no liability. And Barry's quite right. We spent a lot of time. We had a donated dock that we placed down at Talon Chutes. For those that don't know that, it was there for a couple of years, and it was very useful to many of us, including the people that did the Mattawa North Bay canoe race. Ministry came to us and says, look, it's a good idea, but you need insurance for that. And we went out after getting an agreement. We went out and sought the policy. That was $1,200 like 5 years ago for 2 months, 60 days of a floating dock at Talon shoots. $1,200 just for that simple thing. So we pay a lot. We pay almost $1,200 right now for insurance, just for kind of the directors. So I agree with Barry. We really can't take on any liability that is going to really jump our policy, because insurance is tough enough these days. But if they're the people that are doing the work, and I must say, I've been here on this lake 40 some years. I don't know who the people are. I don't want to know, I guess. I would like to thank them, but I don't really want to know who they are. But the people that are doing it, they do it every year, and they're very useful. And maybe we can leave it at that, because people know the hazards and they go mark them very cheaply. And I think people take them and operate their boat around them. So I think we can leave it at that for now. We can talk about it as directors a little later. I think we're close to the end of business here. Does anybody have any other items that we haven't talked about tonight that you feel you should bring to everybody's attention, particularly the board? I'll open the floor. You can put it on the chat or raise your hand.
The Ponds have raised their hand.
Sorry, don't want to get sore elbow from putting my hand up so often, but just food for thought to throw to the directors. If LTCA had a charitable donation receipt capability, it might enhance further donations from stakeholders on the lake in their wills, things like that. It's I think the official receipt, and I don't know what's involved in becoming official from a cost point of view, if you have to register as a charity and what the costs are in maintaining it, but just wondered if it might be worth exploring at some point to improve finances.
Yes, I'm sure Lorraine has brought some expertise here, and it's not something maybe she has an answer to now, but I'm sure she could research that, although she's a very busy lady these days with personal business, so she's giving a lot to us. But yes, that's something that could be looked at. I must say, if you look closely at the balance sheet, we have some very, very generous people on the lake. I think the last number I looked at, over and above memberships, there's a number of people that donated upwards of $1,500. Some years we go even higher. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of businesses on the lake, kind of corporate supporters, but I do commend those people that have, donated even $15. Or one case we had somebody said, "Oh, here's $100, $35 for my membership, and the rest to use where you think is reasonable," and we appreciate that.
I've put my hand up, Paige. So I brought this up earlier to the directors, and this is just something to look at, but about the possibility of legacy donations, so that people can put in their will, for example, that they would like to leave X amount of dollars to the LTCA for lake stewardship or whatever. So we had thought that would be something that perhaps we would need to involve a lawyer to be able to ask about that question. So I don't know if there is anyone who knows much about that. If so, then just maybe put your name in the chat, and it could just be a contact for us to at least explore it further as a possibility.
Thanks, Paige. Yes, I think we could look at that, and that's one reason it's important, these articles of business that we're required to do. I think people want to know, how is the LTCA and all these non-corporate or nonprofit set up, what's going to happen in case they fold up, or where does the money go, or this or that. So these are things that we need to consider, and we need to consider other revenue options that other people are using as well. Whether we can be a designated charity, I don't know. I think we're just a little over the 2-hour mark. I'm very, very pleased how this has gone. I know it's kind of one-sided versus being in person, but I think there was a lot of very positive reasons to do what we've done. They work for other people. I think this is a good start. Paige has done a wonderful job here with her sister Jane in putting these slides together to make us focus a little bit more and see things right in front of us. Picture's always worth 1,000 words, as they say. And so thank you, Jane and Paige, for doing that. Anybody have any wrap-up comments before we ask for a motion to adjourn? Love to see more photos of Talon. Yes, we do have the Instagram. I never mentioned that. Kelly Wallace was instrumental in signing us up to Instagram. The late Mary Ann Jones, boy bless her, she was our kind of designated unofficial official photographer. And I think that very photo you see right there is hers. She took so many wonderful photos of the lake, nature. You can see those on our website, by the way. There is a gallery on our website of various photos, a lot of them of Marianne's, and you can go through those at your leisure, and maybe we should publicize that a little bit more. But it's always great to see just personal what the grandkids are doing, or somebody out fishing. Everybody wants to see what other people are doing. And I think that maybe something we should explore a little bit more. I really am not into Instagram myself, but I do love seeing other people's photographs. So maybe we can raise the bar on that as well as the website. I think we can do better on the website. And Jason and Kelly are committed to doing that when they have time. So other than that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that.
Thank you, Clem. Seconder?
All second, Scott.
Okay,
Thanks.
Scott Ross. Okay, excellent.
You're welcome, Clint.
Thank you very much, everyone. At all means, you can contact us at laketaloncontact@gmail.com. I reply to every email very quickly. We try to be, I know we're open. We try to share everything we can with you. We're trying to use multimedia to communicate with you. So that's my number one goal, is to communicate with all our members and let them know what's happening. And you know, the water management's one thing. You know, we can't always be 100% unanimous on some things, but I'll tell you what's happening, and I know the board is of the same view.
You do a great job, Brian. We all appreciate it more than you ever hear, I'm sure.
Well, that's great. Okay, so good night.
I'll second that as well, Brian. Thank you.
Okay, good. I appreciate the support, and I enjoy what we're doing, and it's great to have some other people around the table that's sharing the load as well. Okay, good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, all.
Thanks so much, everyone. Take
Good night,
care.
all.